In today's video, let's talk about how Valve is finally showing you what games are going to run great on your Steam machine. After that, let's settle the debate on whether or not you should upgrade the RAM in your Steam machine. And finally, despite some news stories you might have seen, Valve will continue to support iFixit with batteries for the Steam Deck LCD. How's it going? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about Steam hardware, and I'm joined as usual in the third video I do every week by my friend, business partner, and just an all-around cool guy, Ray from Xbox Ready.
Yeah, I'm happy to be back. Me and Jimmy just wrapped up filming the two-host version for my channel, Xbox Ready, where we talk about all sorts of crazy stuff happening in the world of Xbox. So if you want to, you can go ahead and check that out. Probably live by the time you see this video. I'm hoping it's going to be live, but you know, you never know. Check out my channel.
But yeah, we actually talked a lot about the ROG Xbox Ally X20 and its OLED screen and how you don't have to buy it in a bundle. Also, my voice is going to be rough this episode because of the wildfire smoke. But with the intro out of the way, let's get into the first topic here and talk about the Great on Machine section that was missing for the whole launch period of the Steam machine. For Ray, and for people who don't know, if you go to your library on the Steam Deck, you can tab over to a section that's called Great on Deck, and it's basically a collection of all the games in your library that are great on deck, aka Steam Deck verified. They actually added a store page for the Steam Frame this week with a bunch of VR games that are apparently great on the frame. We don't know because the hardware is not out yet, and I was sitting there wondering why there's no great on machine section. You'd think that'd be useful now that it's showing up at people's houses, and then right when I started to wonder that, Valve releases an update that includes that feature, which is great. So now if you tab over, you can see all of the games that are great on machine. And basically, if a game is verified for Steam Deck, obviously it's going to work great on the machine. So it's just lumping in all those games. And now that the feature is there, I really hope we start to see them testing newer games. And we've already seen that start to happen with stuff like AC Black Flag Resynced, which did get SteamOS, Steam Deck, and Steam Machine verified. So what do you think of this news, Ray?
I think it's real cool. First of all, it's a great name. Great on machine, boom, straight to the point. I know this game is going to run great on the Steam machine. Over on the Xbox side, I have a little bit of experience with it. They have something similar in the Xbox PC app where it'll tell you this game should run well on your device. And later on, when they started going really hard with Xbox mode and the Xbox Ally X, they rolled out a program that's kind of like Steam Deck verified, but it'll tell you whether this game is optimized for handheld gaming devices through the Xbox PC app. Strangely enough, right when the Xbox Ally X review units were going out, that is around the same time that the Outer Worlds 2 reviews codes were going out. So I thought it'd be a genius idea to jump into the review copy of the Outer Worlds 2 on my Xbox Ally X, but it wasn't verified for handheld yet. It wasn't optimized for handheld yet, which I thought was so stupid. How are you going to launch this thing? How are you going to launch a first-party game and not be ready, not have it optimized for your handheld Xbox? It was the weirdest situation, but they have gotten their shit together since, and it's just a really helpful tool, because the worst thing is buying a game, downloading a game, dedicating all that storage space to it, only to find out that the game runs like shit or is missing certain features, or like the controls aren't compatible. All that stuff, that's terrible. All of that stuff is a pain in the ass to go through. So having that transparency up front with something like Great on Machine, that's a win.
Yeah, I actually think Valve should steal a feature in some fashion from the way Xbox does it, because if a game has a handheld preset, the Xbox app can actually register that you're on a handheld and kind of change the graphics for you so it launches into the correct state. Now, PC publishers, they tend to pick settings that are a little bit lower than you can actually use. This has happened most recently with AC Black Flag Resynced. If you launch it on a Steam Deck, it goes to the absolute bare minimum lowest, when in reality, you can run it at a mix of medium and low settings and get a rock solid 30 FPS out of it. So obviously that's probably a lot more work than Valve wants to do, but I like that, unlike Valve, Xbox is kind of thinking forward with that stuff and trying to get, the scanning of your actual PC parts to figure out what settings are going to work best. I think Valve could do a little bit more work there, because I think that's a genuinely cool feature, and that's what I'm always talking about. When you get real competition, like Xbox kind of going toe-to-toe with Valve, you get these cool features that you're like, I kind of want that over on my side of the fence, and then it gives the ecosystem you're in a direction to head in that's, largely speaking, positive for the most part.
Yeah, for Great on Machine, this does two things, theoretically, for Steam Machine owners, right? It answers the question that is on everyone's mind. First, you don't have to go to a YouTuber to find out, is this game going to run well? Is this game going to be okay if I launch it on my Steam machine? It'll just tell you right there in SteamOS, in the little game pop-up card. Second of all, it makes it easier for Valve because now they have a target to know for a fact, okay, just how well this game can run or what this game is capable of on the Steam machine versus having to do this like blanket situation for all of the different rigs that are out there.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that it's just lumping in every game that's already verified for Steam Deck, because an issue we consistently run into on the Steam Deck is that people treat the verification rating as gospel. So when they see the unsupported box or whatever, the icon, they don't even test the game. They don't go out of their way to look at ProtonDB. They don't go out of their way to look on YouTube, and they just say this game does not work, when we found multiple times, like more often than not, the games work totally fine. No one just went through the trouble to test them. And Valve actually figured out a system for this. Now, if you play an unsupported game, sometimes it'll ask you at the end when you quit the game, did this run well? And then eventually, if enough people say yes, it'll automatically give it a playable rating, I want to say. So we're headed in the right direction. I'm glad this is there. But this is just another situation where Valve, being kind of like a cooler company, I would say, who just kind of does things as they pop up, sort of reared its head because, you know, the Frame got the section on the store page before the machine, but at least they're figuring it out. We're within the first couple of weeks of people even getting these things to begin with, so happy to see them adding in these features. But one thing that I've been really curious about is the whole single stick situation with the RAM. Are you caught up on this at all? Do I need to explain this?
Yes, I know how much RAM is in it. It's 16 gigs, right? It's split up into two 8 sticks.
No, just one 16 gig totally
okay.
across the board. People have an issue with this, not because it's only 16 gigs of RAM, but apparently when you have a PC, if you have 2 sticks making up 16, it performs a little bit better in some games than if you have one 16 gigabyte stick, because if you have 2, it can upload the information to the CPU and download it at the same time. So it creates like a feedback loop. Whereas if you have one stick, it has to do those things sequentially. So if it blasts data to the CPU, it has to wait for that data to get back. Now, people made a bigger deal out of this than I think was warranted, because Gamers Nexus and a bunch of other people did a bunch of tests with 2 sticks after Valve said it was a negligible difference, and found that in like 2 or 3 very specific games like Baldur's Gate 3, where it's running a bunch of systems and stuff like that, there is a legitimate benefit that equates to like 5 or 10 FPS or like better frame times. But like in the vast majority of games, it does not really make a difference, A. And B, the reason they ended up going with one stick is because it helped them get the price to where it is. And as we know, people are already unhappy with the price. So even if they were going to add in 2 sticks and make it cost more, I think people still would have been mad. So the real question to ask is it worth it if you have an extra stick laying around, or you were able to pick up, you know, the exact same type of RAM, another 16 gig stick on eBay or something for a decent price? Is it worth tearing apart your Steam machine to add it? And thankfully, a few people have done this that aren't me, because I'm not doing it. I'm just going to say it right now. You have to tear apart this thing basically down to the studs to get access to the RAM slots. And you know, this thing was hard enough to get. I paid for it with $1,500 of my own money. I'm pretty good at taking apart and rebuilding PCs. I just don't want to break it at a critical time when, you know, the vast majority of my views basically hinge on actually having this hardware in my house. So I'm not going to do it, because you basically have to tear it down to the studs. So
that's absolutely insane. I was reading the process that you sent over, that just cutting, like taking out the cooling fan and cutting like up to 4 different ribbons connected. I'm like, what the holy, for on just another stick, right? Just one. I mean, that's crazy. I wouldn't trust myself doing that either, especially in that form factor, right? I mean, I feel like with a regular size PC, you got a little bit of leeway. You can make some mistakes, but with the precision that everything is assembled with in the Steam machine, I feel I'm not touching that. I'm sorry. I don't trust myself.
Yeah, and I can tell you firsthand, because up until very recently, like a year ago, every gaming PC I owned was a high-end laptop. I was really ingrained in the Razer Blade ecosystem, and I was on this upgrade path where when I wanted a new one, I would just sell the old one and usually get what I paid for it. So like I had to pay a little bit more because the MSRPs kept going up, but like overall, I was pretty much breaking even. And I know, because I always changed out the SSD in these things, every Razer Blade I've ever owned shipped with 1 stick of RAM, and they all ran fine. I never noticed any performance problems related to having one stick of RAM. And of course, when you talk about it being hard to replace the stick of RAM, people get mad at Valve for placing it in a hard to reach spot, but they talked about this before the Steam Machine came out. The reason the RAM is placed where it is intentional, because if you place it anywhere else and make it more easily accessible, it causes interference with the radio that connects to the Steam controller or Wi-Fi. And after using this thing on Wi-Fi, I'm glad they didn't mess with that at all, because for some reason, the Steam Machine gets the best Wi-Fi speeds of any device I've ever owned. I'm downloading games so fast on this thing that the speed of downloading games vastly outstrips the speed it can write to the SSD. So now that I've experienced that, I do not want to mess anything up at all. I want it to continue to work the way it currently is.
Yeah, the trade-off just doesn't seem worth it for what you're describing as just very minimal performance boost. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, forgive me if I'm wrong. Wouldn't the two sticks of 8 GB RAM to make up that 16 gigs of RAM, wouldn't that really only be beneficial if you're using the Steam Machine as something like a traditional desktop PC where you're running like other apps and also playing games? Like, I don't know, like I have Streamlabs open, I'm using like Discord while also playing the game.
Yes, exactly. And I can tell you, after playing Masochism Simulator Dead by Daylight while using Discord and listening to music in the background, there's no RAM issue. So what people are really trying to do is upgrade it from 16 to 32. So instead of buying two 8 GB sticks, they're buying another 16 gig and upgrading it. 32 is and has been overkill in PCs for a few years now, and I don't foresee that changing because, no one's really going to be buying the new hardware that comes out over the next couple of years. So we're going to be sticking with current gen for a while. If you get your hands on one of these things and you're really technically proficient, go right ahead. It's just not something I'm really interested in doing with my one singular Steam Machine, which just happens to be the highest price model. It's going to stay where it is. Like, I don't want to break it.
People are going to start flexing like sticks of RAM, some like SSDs, like their DDR5. Like instead of like fanning out $100 bills, they're going to they're just start flexing like their sticks of RAM and stuff.
So another piece of drama that popped up this week was that Valve allegedly stopped sending iFixit batteries for the Steam Deck LCD, which I'm going to be real. I know I'm a little bit of a Valve glazer. Seemed a little bit off to me because right now is the most critical time for that part to be available, because, with any handheld, any phone, you get a new phone, you get a new handheld, you throw them in your drawer, you open that drawer and then the back is popping off because the battery expanded. The Steam Deck LCD is like over 4 years old at this point. So while it's not really at risk of becoming a spicy pillow, as they're called, it's going to start happening sooner rather than later. So right now is when you'd want that part available versus like 2 or 3 years ago when the thing was brand new. So I was like, I'm going to hold off on covering this because it seems a little bit fishy. Turns out it was a little bit fishy. Not only is Valve going to continue to supply iFixit with this part, they said in the eventuality that they can no longer get this part anymore, they'll hook iFixit up with the manufacturer so they can continue getting it. And this was just for the Steam Deck LCD. It wasn't for the Steam Deck OLED. I think it ended up as good as it possibly could, because that's one of the biggest benefits of the Steam Deck. If a part breaks and it's out of warranty, you can get the part to replace it very cheaply, I will add, on iFixit, and every part page has a detailed YouTube tutorial with a written tutorial under it on how to replace that part.
How common would you say that happens? I mean, you own a couple of different models of the deck, and you've had those for, a few years at this point. You haven't said anything about, battery expansion on your part.
Okay.
Is this just like a vocal minority situation where they're trying to spell this doomsday situation, like manufacturer backlash? Because at least on my end, I don't have a Steam Deck in this apartment, but I still have my Xbox Ally, I have my Xbox Ally X, and I just haven't had any issues on that front.
Yeah, I just took my regular Ally X out of the drawer to give to my brother. Battery is fine. He's been having a great time with it. Like I said, I've never experienced this on anything I've ever owned, and I don't use the battery charging limiter. They added this kind of recently where you can cap it off.
You can cap it at 80. Yeah. Hold on. I got a rant about this because in order to use that feature, you have to have an Asus account That doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Like, why is that not just standard? Like,
So you need the like Asus Armory Crate account set up.
they
to
force
access
you
that?
to. That's an exclusive feature that you have to sign up for. It's crazy.
That's nuts because, the battery life at 100% on that thing is already
It's
not
not
great.
great.
So
Yeah, like what?
you kind of want that. I've never used that feature. Like I used it 1 year actually on an iPhone and it did not seem to help at all. The battery still shit out after 2 years. So I was like, it's going to shit out either way. I may as well get the full 100% out of it. And I leave my Steam Deck plugged in next to my bed constantly. The green light is always on. I have the limited edition OLED that came out in 2022. The battery is just fine. So it really does seem like luck of the draw whether or not your battery shits the bed. I don't know if there's like extra steps, like, these people who tear off the stick caps on their controllers. I've never done that. Either way, it seems like, the media right now, the games media, has sensed the blood in the water for Valve, and they're just like trying to dig up anything they can start criticizing them for.
Yeah,
this
for
one had
sure.
this one had a shelf life of around 2 or 3 hours, so not that big of a deal at the end of the day.
I mean, yeah, I get it, man. I get it. We're all kind of in the same business, right? You got to get those clicks, you got to get those views. But yeah, sometimes these issues way blown out of proportion. Like what? Like one person will complain about this. We talked about this in your last video, where like one guy complained about the red line of death, and he was having issues, and it got fixed relatively quickly, from what I remember. And everyone was like, "Oh, Red Ring of Death 2.0." I'm like, nowhere near the Red Ring of Death. Are you kidding me? That's a Red Ring of Death almost collapsed the entire Xbox brand. And we're talking the Red Line of Death is maybe affecting a handful of people out there. Nowhere near close. I was insulted.
I think we got up to 2 people total that had that issue. And then there were people that were running into it playing demanding games. And then Valve was like, yeah, we were too conservative on that. So they released an update that like raised the threshold of when it's going to give you the I'm overheating warning. I've never seen it. And I've been playing the shit out of that thing. I think I've tested like 30 games in a row and like demanding stuff like Until Dawn all the way down to Resident Evil 5. It handles them like a champ. So as far as I'm aware, my Steam Machine, my Steam Decks, they're all fine. Let's keep it that way because I don't want to have to replace the battery. I did it once in a Nintendo Switch and it was a nightmare. It was the glue they use to hold these things down. It's like cement, dude. You feel like you're going to snap the thing in half when you're prying it out. It's just more work that I want to do.
Dude, you did that for my Switch, remember?
Oh, it was your Switch. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had the orange screen. I had the orange screen of death, so I was like, Jim, I need your nimble hands, brother.
I had never done it before, and he ordered the parts. I took it home, and then I was sweating, dude. I was so nervous. I barely knew Ray at that point. I didn't want to break his Switch, but I persevered. So I have experience. Maybe I have trauma, like PTSD from doing that. I'm just like scared of anything like replacing a major part like that. There are people who, with the Steam Deck LCD, they made this thing called DeckSight, I want to say is what it's called, where it was like a 1200p OLED screen you could order. And it's just like the RAM on the Steam Machine, where you had to strip it down to the barest of parts. And people were like, yeah, it took me around 6 hours. I think I broke a couple things, but doesn't it look nice at the end? And it's like, yeah, but like, at that point, the Steam Deck OLED was only $500, and you got to start pricing your time out by the hour. I just got to ask, was it worth it?
And like 80% of the time, I mean, for these people, like maybe seeing it through to the end and completing that project, that was worth the time and the effort that they could have been doing anything else. But yeah, y'all know me. I've owned one pre-built PC in my lifetime, and FedEx ended up messing it up when I moved from Texas to California. And now I have a gaming laptop. So yeah, I don't trust myself in messing with any of that, especially when it comes to pre-built stuff like a Steam Machine, like a gaming laptop. I'm just going to sit out on that one.
Sounds like the prime audience for the Xbox Helix when that eventually released. Right there. That's who they're making it for.
There we go. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, that's what you have to consider, right? Like these things ideally should last 8, 10 years and beyond that. So when you get down and you really got to tear apart this thing that you just spent $1,100 to $1,500 on, you got to really be careful. You got to really question, is it going to be worth it? And I think from what me and Jimmy have been talking about, the answer is probably not.
I've been going through a little bit of a crisis lately because I've been playing some newer games on my 5080 equipped PC. And like obviously that thing runs anything I throw at it, basically maxed out at 1440p to match my monitor. And I kind of miss the whole game of finding the perfect settings that'll run at like 30, 40, or 60 FPS. You know, that hour I spend with other PCs like my 9070 XT rig and everything, it feels a little bit like cheating to have a PC like that where you could just boot up a game and it just works. It's like, wow, this is nice. So people are asking me about an unreleased game we were playing, how it runs. And I'm like, I don't know. It's running fine for me, but like every game runs fine for me.
Yeah, I had to do a lot of tinkering in order to get Crimson Desert running on my Xbox Ally X. A lot of tinkering because before that, when they were just kind of giving me the pre-gen settings, I couldn't even get past the loading screen where he's walking through like the Animus thing. Because on console, obviously, they dumb it down to the lowest possible level. Do you want quality or do you want performance? Boom, those are your options. Sometimes you can turn off anti-aliasing. Sometimes you can turn off motion blur. If you're lucky, you can change the field of view slider if you are lucky. But on PC, obviously, there are so many other settings that you can go down to, especially when it comes to upscaling. And I've been having a lot of fun exploring that aspect.
So yeah, that about covers everything we have to talk about in today's video. If you want to hear us talk about Xbox Helix only potentially selling 2 million units and why that's not a big deal, it's going to be very familiar to people who watch this channel. We also talked about the ROG Xbox Ally X20, and then we rounded out talking about the Elder Scrolls Online and how the layoffs have hit that studio. It's linked down in the description, but you should also check out Ray's Instagram if you're a fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, because I've seen it. I like it. I wouldn't call myself a huge fan of it. I'm finding myself engaged with the videos he's making because they're legitimately funny. Do you have anything else to share before I send us home?
No, that's about it. Covering Avatar on my Instagram, covering Xbox on my Xbox channel. And I just got my tickets to go see the new Avatar: The Last Airbender movie where they're all adults. The movie that was infamously pulled from a theatrical run in favor of being streaming only, which I know Jim, he loves stuff like that. But I'm glad that I'm glad that I live in one of the 2 cities that they're choosing to put this movie into theaters at. So yeah, I'll be covering all of that. Super excited for it. I'd love to have you along for the journey if you want to follow.
Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in this one. I got to go pump my lungs. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.